All right, so I saw Sam Sanders on Twitter said earlier before this that he said something about 4 hours or so ago, 5 hours maybe, for his announcement. He said, if you want are you having a live stream party? If so, you can, talk to us, we'll interview you, and you might be on the show tomorrow morning. So it must be tomorrow morning.
Thank you. See, that's an investigative journalist right there. Thumbs up.
Really quickly.
Sure. Just one more.
Yeah, one more. There's one more.
Appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thanks.
Hello.
Hi, what's your name?
Burke.
Burke, what's your last name?
Slothauber.
Spell both of those names.
Alright, yeah. Everyone has trouble with these,
I feel like there's room for stating things that are obviously wrong with facts.
Absolutely.
And you can still be rational.
Yeah, well that's what I was saying earlier.
But you have to just be very clear.
Yeah. We need to say stuff, but at the same time we can't be emotional, like say, oh, the media is biased against us, we have to give examples.
Okay. What happened to the mood in the room once the address started and throughout the address online? Yeah. Wow. And how many folks were there? Okay, so that was like a Bernie party. All right. He did not drop out tonight. Did that surprise you? Should he have dropped out tonight? Gotcha. What kind of space is the campaign in now? So he hasn't dropped out, but he doesn't have the numbers there to actually be the nominee. What should we call this period of time that Bernie Sanders and his campaign is in right now? What is the name for this thing? I think someone's talking behind you. Yeah. You know, there was one word he did not say tonight, and one word that he and a lot of the supporters have not been saying in the last few weeks is that he has lost the race for the nomination. Yeah, I know that some folks that I talked to were touchy about using that word. Would you say that he has lost the race for the nomination? Or, gotcha. What do you make of what happens for the party in this election as far as unifying? He says he'll work to defeat Donald Trump. What do you think that entails, and does that entail Bernie supporters like you voting for Clinton? Gotcha. So when you mentioned that the convention hasn't happened yet, are you saying that there's still some desire for it to be a contested convention in which Bernie could possibly come back and take the nomination? If he told his supporters to support Hillary Clinton, would you? As which person? Gotcha. I want to get onto some other calls, but I know you said that there were some other folks that had some thoughts really quickly.
Now, in this country, the Democratic presidential race appears to be over, though the man in second place has not quite said it's over. On Tuesday, Bernie Sanders lost the year's final primary to Hillary Clinton. On Wednesday, he and Clinton had a private meeting. Last night, Bernie Sanders gave a speech. NPR's Sam Sanders listened to what he did say.
It was not a big, stadium-filling Sanders rally. He's had a lot of those this campaign.
Good evening, and thank you very much for joining me.
It was just Bernie Sanders, just him, live streaming with a bit of an echo in front of a blue background with Bernie 2016, his campaign logo, all over it. And below his image, these words: "The political revolution continues."
Election days come and go, but political and social revolutions that attempt to transform our society never end.
Sanders thanked his supporters, and then he talked about just how much his campaign for president has accomplished.
When we began this campaign a little over a year ago, we had no political organization, no money, and very little name recognition.
He's right.
Well, a lot has changed over a year.
Also true. Sanders won millions of votes, maybe even surprising Sanders himself. But he also came in second in delegates and the popular vote. So this could have been the night Sanders dropped out. He did not. Instead, he hit on just about everything in his political agenda.
It is about ending a campaign finance system which is corrupt and allows billionaires to buy elections. It is about ending the grotesque level of wealth and income inequality. It is about creating an economy that works for all of us.
And there was more. Medicare for All, his signature proposal, the plight of minorities in America, immigration reform, infrastructure, and more. But Sanders made no mention of continuing to fight for the nomination. Instead, he said his campaign is now focused on defeating Donald Trump. And Sanders talked about how to keep the revolution going, urging his supporters to transform the Democratic Party and run for office.
We need new blood in the political process, and you are that new blood.
But in all of this, all 23 minutes of his speech, Bernie Sanders did not endorse Hillary Clinton or say exactly what he'd do at the Democratic convention.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me? I talked with lots of Sanders supporters via Skype after the speech. Sanders supporter Laurel Bosma actually had a party for the live stream.
We were hooping and hollering to different things that Bernie was saying and agreeing and saying, We had him on a projector on the wall, and it was beautiful.
She loved the speech, and she said Bernie should not drop out.
No, personally, no. No, not in my opinion.
When I asked her how she'd vote, what she'd do in November, she wouldn't say.
We're not there yet.
I also talked with Jack Thomas Wheatley.
And I was writing down like what he's saying, and I almost thought of it as like a long breakup.
Wheatley had volunteered for the Sanders campaign for months, but now supports Clinton. He had a lot of thoughts on the election and the Democratic Party, everything. But here's the thing. Jack Thomas Wheatley is only 16. You know, I just realized you can't vote.
No, I can't, but I am the president of the debate team in our school.
Whatever his age, Wheatley said Sanders can still change things through people like himself.
It's not just going to be he got everyone for this election. It's he's going to get everyone for the next couple elections. People are now listening to what they have to say. I've talked to more people now that are younger about politics than I ever have before just because they've been interested in what he's been saying.
And maybe that's what it's about now, that new blood Bernie Sanders mentioned in his speech. Like Jack Thomas Wheatley said, for the next election, and the next one, and the next. Sam Sanders, no relation, NPR News.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. All right.
Were you able to actually see him while you were?
No.
Laurel, the Warriors are playing the Cavaliers.
No, like I even care.
Alright, so,
Not in this
yeah, I
How
need
old are you?
15.
He needs to know when the
So
convention
that reporter
starts.
didn't even ask
He needs
how
to
old
know
he
when the
is.
convention starts.
He didn't ask.
He needs to know
He
when
said, how do you spell your name and how do you
If
say it?
anyone comes across any form, some copy of what NPR aired, if they do air anything, that'd be good so I can compare them.
Yeah, I don't know when or if they're gonna.
Yeah.
I would think tomorrow morning.
Yeah, it would be
I-
fairly recent because they want to comment on the fact it was his.
His-
But man alive, how
live
would they
stream.
do that? I just
Yeah.
don't think they'll use us.
Yeah, I don't
Like you said, he's going to talk
I
to a
don't
lot of
think
people.
He's
He's searching for that person. Is like, yeah, see these jerks.
I don't think they will, but the
I
raw
hope they do.
yeah,
I'm gonna bust
the raw footage we have though would be good enough because I can just talk about how he acted to us.
It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You make a very good point. Even if they don't use us, I can still bust them.
Uh-huh.
To say, you see what they did not show?
Yeah.
Yes.
They're only creating a single perspective,
Yeah.
which is a narrow, limited perspective, and it's false.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
Were you able to actually see him while you were?
No.
Let me conclude by once again thanking everyone who has helped in this campaign in one way or another. We have begun the long and arduous process of transforming America, a fight that will continue tomorrow, next week, next year, and into the future. My hope is that when future historians look back and describe how our country moved forward into reversing the drift toward oligarchy, and how we move forward in creating a government which represents all of the people and not just the few, that they will note that to a significant degree, that effort began with the political revolution of 2016. Thank you all very much. Good night.
Last night, Bernie Sanders gave a speech. NPR's Sam Sanders.
The political revolution continues.
Election days come and go, but political and social revolutions that attempt to transform our society never end.
Sanders thanked his supporters, and then he talked about just how much his campaign for president has accomplished.
When we began this campaign a little over a year ago, we had no political organization, no money, and very little name recognition.
He's right.
Well, a lot has changed over a year.
Also true, Sanders won millions of votes, maybe even surprising Sanders himself. And he hit on just about everything in his political agenda.
It is about ending a campaign finance system which is corrupt and allows billionaires to buy elections. It is about ending the grotesque level of wealth and income inequality. It is about creating an economy that works for all of us.
And there was more. Medicare for All, his signature proposal, the plight of minorities in America, immigration reform, infrastructure, and Sanders talked about how to keep the revolution going, urging his supporters to transform the Democratic Party and run for office.
We need new blood in the political process, and you are that new blood.
Hello.
Hey, can you hear me? I talked with lots of Sanders supporters via Skype after the speech. Sanders supporter Laurel Bosma actually had a party for the live stream.
We were hooping and hollering to different things that Bernie was saying and agreeing and saying, We had him on a projector on the wall, and it was beautiful.
She loved the speech. I also talked with Jack Thomas Wheatley. Wheatley had volunteered for the Sanders campaign for months. He had a lot of thoughts on the election and the Democratic Party, everything. But here's the thing. Jack Thomas Wheatley is only 16. You know, I just realized you can't vote.
No, I can't.
Whatever his age, Wheatley said Sanders can still change things through people like himself.
It's not just going to be he got everyone for this election. He's going to get everyone for the next couple elections. People are now listening to what they have to say. I've talked to more people now that are younger about politics than I ever have before, just because they've been interested in what he's been saying.
And maybe that's what it's about now. That new blood Bernie Sanders mentioned in his speech. Like Jack Thomas Wheatley said, for the next election, and the next one, and the next. Sam Sanders, no relation, NPR News.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. All right.
I know somebody who works there, and she said, and I brought this up to her. I said, "Is there pressure coming down from the top to support Hillary?" And she's like, "Nope, there's no pressure." I'm like, "Are you sure?" And she has integrity. She says it's not happening. Now I don't know how that could be, because you listen to Steve Inskeep when he was interviewing Bernie Sanders a month and a half ago, and he was a jerk during that interview. And I liked Steve Inskeep until that day. For many years I've been listening to him, and I couldn't believe the way he was treating Bernie, asking the same question over and over in a badgering fashion, because he was just. It wasn't right.
Senator, I put a call out on Twitter. I said, I'm talking to Bernie Sanders. You got anything you want to know? And the most consistent theme in the many responses we got had to do with how long you're going to stay in this race. Even though you just won Indiana, people are looking at the delegate counts, recognizing that you've got long odds and wondering if you're going to stay in too long. Let me ask a couple of specific questions. These are just people on Twitter. Here's one. Are you threatening your revolution by continuing and alienating some Democrats from voting for Hillary Clinton eventually? Another variation on this question from Twitter. Which is more important, a Sanders presidency or a Democratic presidency?
Bernie Sanders does better against Donald Trump than does Hillary Clinton. So if we want to make sure that we do not have a Donald Trump in the White House, I think at this point, Bernie Sanders is the strongest candidate.
Do you mean to say a Sanders presidency is more important than this person's suggestion that a Democratic presidency might be more important? Question along those lines, and this is my question now. You told Chuck Todd of NBC the other day that if Secretary Clinton does clinch the nomination, quote, the responsibility will be on Secretary Clinton to convince all people, not just your supporters, that she is the kind of president this country needs. Are you convinced, Senator? The reason I ask is because you did say earlier in the campaign she was not qualified. Can you convince yourself, or have you convinced yourself that she is qualified? Does that mean to say that you would be out this fall if you don't win the nomination campaigning?
As I just said, Steve, I will do everything in my power to make sure that he does not become president.
Talk me through.
So, Steve, thank you so much.
Senator?
Yeah.
Do you mind if I ask one more question?
One last question, sure. We got time for one more.
Yeah, just talk me through, because you said you have a tough path, but one that you can walk.
Right.
I'm just interested about a little bit of the mechanics here. You'd have to win a lot of delegates, a great majority of delegates along the way to get a majority of pledged delegates. There are some big states ahead, it's certainly true, but just the way delegates are awarded, even if you win California, even if you win West Virginia, you don't get all the delegates. They're not winner take all. Doesn't that make this extraordinarily difficult for you?
Yes, it's an uphill battle, but you know what, Steve?
Senator Sanders, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Steve. Take care.
Democratic presidential candidate Bernie Sanders spoke yesterday in southern Indiana.
So when we're all talking to NPR, it's going to be it might be kind of messy just with lots of people, so in order to, and we have to be really clear to them because they could twist it, so when
they will
everyone's,
if they want to anyway, Rick.
Yeah, but we have to be careful, and so one thing is, so that people's messages don't get talked over, we need to make sure that everyone gets a chance to talk and that they can be clearly heard.
And also, the person may ask questions that are the kind of thing that makes you go, yeah, that did happen. You know, like the angry things. Like, you know, do you feel like the elections were tainted? Do you feel this and that? They may throw out those kind of questions. Don't go for it.
Right.
Just be like, look, we listen to Bernie. He's got a great message for the future. You know, let's just be mature about it because it's not going to do any good, especially on NPR.
Mm-hmm.
We just have to be the bigger people at this point. You know,
Well, the thing to do would be to attack NPR directly and to attack the fact that David Koch is allowed to fund the news hour.
Now, that's not going to get on the air. So
I actually did send them an email today when they were talking about interviewing us about what I thought about how things went, how Bernie was ignored and dismissed. And I said...
they never got to laughing at
about the you know, that probably a lot of the reporters and staff there are dismayed by that too, but they can't do anything about it because of
the structure there.
Yeah, where the money comes
there's
from.
There's not a co-op there. It's a employer. Those people are very, very privileged workers. And they protect that privilege.
The primaries are over, so I think whatever we say, we shouldn't be too scared to say stuff, though, because even if they try and twist it against us, at this point, it won't have an effect. So whatever, this is a good opportunity.
Depending on what people think of Bernie, is going to weigh in on what his effect is on the convention in July.
Yeah.
And I mean, we're just a small part. Who knows if anybody's going to hear us hear this at all?
Yeah,
but it's important that people understand that we are rational people that think things through. We're not just about free tuition and not really thinking about it.
And rob the banks.
We can also, I think, mention not necessarily that it's conspiracy against us or anything like that. Just this is the problem that in order to, because it gets good ratings, the media has been giving excessive coverage to Donald Trump. And it's ignored our campaign.
That's been documented. How many times? It's like 23 times.
It's like
the coverage of the other candidates.
For Bernie and 20-4 for Hillary. It's just amazing. I mean, why anybody would, why? Because, it's going to sell advertising. That's the only reason I can come up with.
It's interesting to watch, that's for sure.
The biggest reason that the media is doing this, I think, is because we are the only serious threat to their income. The part of their income that comes from all this political campaign spending. I liked what he said. 8 million people gave him donations, as opposed to
a record
20 people owning more wealth than the next 150 million Americans. That makes a huge difference, and people have to hear that. It's not something like you were talking about, Bob, where people have already made up their minds.
No, what you're talking about, that's definitely worth saying. So, Burke, I agree with everything you're saying in terms of, I do feel like the media was biased and all that stuff. However, we say that, and everybody who believes it is going to agree with us, and everybody who, this stuff's been out there. People have already picked their positions on that, and you can say it, and it's not going to change anybody's opinion. You have the people that agree with you and the people that disagree. So it's sort of a moot point, except it can be used against us.
Sorry, but...
Well, they're not going to say it on NPR either.
Right. We want to talk about these things, but it's not today's topic of the report, I don't think.
I think we should forget the idea that we're going to be on the air.
Yeah, I don't think we are. But I didn't come here to be on air.
I'm going to try and mention that Bernie's the more electable one, but I need to connect it. I'm going to try and connect that to just Trump has been covered excessively and the Sanders campaign has been ignored.
Even with all this biased play, all this propaganda.
Yeah.
We still almost won.
Right.
Yeah, and
had we had the independent votes and a straight, fair process, we would have won.
Right.
Yeah, and this is what I'm saying is I think...
And we could win in November if you folks nominate Bernie instead of Hillary.
We have to be clear about what our message is. Like, if I'm in school and I'm given a report on the dinosaurs, I can throw in a bunch of facts about the dinosaurs. But my point of my story is going to be very focused. Maybe I want to talk about how they became extinct or the relevance in the history of all animals, whatever.
We still have dinosaur DNA in us.
You made a very good point where the primaries, they're over. So the effect of referencing, this was rigged and everything else is going to be very minimal, other than to vent and to complain.
Although they could get people to sign in on petitions and stuff. Right?
I mean, the message that's going to come across is, we get it, you Bernie bros, you're angry.
Right. So that's not the focus. This shouldn't be the focus.
Why did Bernie, who's a very intelligent man, he's been arguing these points for a gazillion years, and the man himself isn't talking about these things. Why? Because he's framed his conversation in the future. What we need to do to change the future.
Right.
And so if we communicate that to NPR, which I don't actually think they're gonna come and bail out. Yeah, But if we're communicating the past, that's what they really want. Yeah. If we're communicating Bernie's future, and we go, it's not about Bernie, this election, 2016.
It's about the revolution.
It's about the revolution.
The ideas.
That's going to make their minds explode.
For me, it's the beginning. Bernie has awakened us to transform the Democratic Party. He's brought lots and lots of new voters into the Democratic Party. Not only young people, not only millennials, but all kinds of people from all ages and backgrounds are really excited about him. I've seen this throughout all of volunteer events and rallies. Brought in independent voters. It's just been really exciting. He wants to end perpetual warfare and make ourselves a nation of economic, social, racial, and environmental justice, which I just thought that was a beautiful way to put it. All I know is it's the beginning for Bernie Sanders and for our movement. Whoever the nominee will be, we are behind Bernie Sanders 100%. Bringing in people who will carry on his message in all levels of government, getting those people elected, getting young people to go into careers that will help promote social welfare. I'm not going to predict the future. What I'm thinking about right now is just going along with where we're at in the moment. I want to be mindful about where we're at in the moment. Right now, the convention hasn't happened. We've been against Donald Trump since day one, and we will continue to be. I'm not one who's going to try and predict the future. All I know is I'm going to support Bernie and whatever he's doing. Each individual has to decide that for themselves, but like I've already said, we're not there yet.
What were your thoughts on the address?
I think he did a really good job. I think, things have been tough, but he's remained hopeful, and he mentioned a lot of good causes like the Native Americans, which I don't think I've ever seen a politician mention, and so I think he did a really good job.
Sweet. This is great. I just have one more question for the party host. Can you put it back on really quickly?
Sure.
Thanks.
Hi.
Hey, I just want to get an idea of the scene. So you had it projected on a big wall. What kind of food did you have?
Oh, potluck, of course.
What kind of things were potlucked?
We had some vegan food. We had some donuts. Lots of vegetables.
Sounds fun.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then tell me where the party was. You're in Virginia?
Yes.
Where in Virginia?
In Reston, Virginia.
Reston, Virginia.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, my name is Philip Dale. I've been organizing a lot of barnstorms for Bernie. I've been volunteering as a regional leader for the last couple of months, actually since the beginning of 2016, with the Bernie campaign. And one thing that struck me is how he was able to bring people of many different racial, economic, and political backgrounds. And in terms of political backgrounds, I can definitely say that there were a lot of volunteers who were, there are obviously a lot of Democrats, but also some, left-wing independents, independents generally. Independents were coming out hugely for him, and even moderate Republicans, Greens, and Libertarians. And these are all people who would not ordinarily work to go for the same candidate, but they did this time around. And honestly, I don't think anyone else could bring people together the way he did at least in this election cycle, without addressing the same issues that he's doing. And also by demonstrating that integrity. I think that they only would follow someone of integrity. And of course, when push comes to shove in November, if he's not the nominee, I'm sure I'm pretty sure that people will follow their conscience and they'll vote however they want to vote, and that may not be for the same person. And that I think that they should keep that in mind. I think when they're selecting who the Democratic nominee is going to be. But ultimately, whatever happens, I know I will be continuing to work for these issues that he has brought up, and they should be bigger than even just any particular party. I think that all these people, no matter who they were and what party they affiliated with, will continue to work for the same ideas because we all agree with it.
Awesome. Thank y'all so much.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
All right. Bye.
Were you able to actually see him while you were?
No.
So how do we keep our message going?
I don't know. That's why
we gotta figure that out.
We can meet, but maybe there also has to be acknowledgement that each of us will do it our own way.
If we air our ideas and talk them out, as C points out, be a devil's advocate, criticize the ideas, so that we know what their fallacies and weaknesses are, we'll come up with better ideas, and we'll be willing to try things because we'll be willing to make mistakes.
Yeah,
the biggest problem the Democratic Party right now has is they're not willing to make mistakes or admit that they ever did.
That's true too.
Oh, that's great.
That's true. But maybe we should. I know, maybe not. I don't know. I'm waffling on this. I'm just thinking to myself.
Get the idea
I'm thinking that.
Hi, Hillary.
No. I'm thinking we push the idea that he is the better candidate against Donald Trump. That he had much more support. That many people gave to his campaign. That he has enthusiasm. He has all that.
And all the independent polls made him the winner.
Yes, and the independents love him, and the young people. Both of those groups are going to be hugely important in November. And a lot of them couldn't vote. A lot of them couldn't vote in the closed primaries and whatnot, we could also say because of the racketeering and whatever.
Just enough to say they didn't get their chance to vote. Their chance to vote. They didn't get their right to vote.
Right.
He's even stronger, and that's good enough.
They didn't get the right.
You don't have to go any further than that.
Brilliant.
Some of us are going to vote for Hillary. Some of us are going to not vote at all. Some of us are going to vote for the Green Party. Maybe a couple for constitutional. Or write in Bernie Sanders. So it's like we're going to be diluted in the actual.
No, it doesn't really matter so much
election.
As long as we're united in terms of what we think the issues are, and we're willing to do something about it.
So what's C gonna say? Or what were you gonna say, C?
He's going to be the devil's advocate.
Well, you make me want to think of a couple of things. First of all, you're a genius. Second of all, Bernie said something about the message. He said something about, we need to push forward the people's voice.
Yes.
And that was it. I mean, it's not about Bernie. It's not about Hillary. It's not about anything. It's whether or not the message is reflective of my voice.
Right.
That's why, it's not anti-Hillary. It's not even pro-Bernie. It's going, you know what? That's my voice.
Right.
And when we nominate or elect somebody who doesn't match my voice, of course, I'm not going to respond to that. It's not going to resonate with me. So he's focusing on all those issues, but it's about, are we actually pushing forward the people's voice or someone else's? And if we're not, game over.
Yeah, this campaign has made me hopeful, though, because I thought the divide in this country was too big.
Well, I thought I was going to have to go to Canada. I'm going to be 68 in July.
But I didn't see the fact that I saw these people working together. And
I was partial to Iceland.
It blew my mind, and maybe I saw more than most. I don't know, but it blew my mind because I couldn't imagine that these people would work together on anything. That's what. And the fact that they cared about each other, that they were just like, and that we could have like a discussion of the issues where, I disagree. All right, let's go back to working to Bernie. Like, it's like they were, or like, oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I don't know, but it's like
left despair.
No, but they were willing to work, but they're willing to work for a high and also they agreed on a lot. Like, yeah, of course they're different philosophy. The socialist is not going to agree with the moderate Republican. The progressive is not going to agree with the libertarian. I mean, although they did agree on some things, which just goes to show a lot of these philosophies are not mutually exclusive. They tend to focus on particular things. But that also was a mind blow, because I thought, by definition, if you're a conservative, you can't agree with a progressive. It just in this campaign, I now believe that that's not true.
One of the things that I got out of Bernie's speech is, yes, this election may go down like it looks like it's going to go down between Hillary and Trump, and Hillary is probably going to win. But I think that what Bernie,
kind of weird.
I think what Bernie's going to do is carry the revolution forward.
Yeah.
I myself am going to continue supporting Bernie. I think in the Senate, he's going to go back to the Senate. I think he's going to continue the revolution and run it, from his Senate office.
I actually think he should. I
think I'm going to be still part of his revolution and respond to when he wants us to do this or that. put pressure on so-and-so, mail in emails, mail or whatever. That's how I think we can continue this revolution.
Check out Brand New Congress and, of course, Bernie's new site.
I like Brand New
/win
Congress just because of the name.
because I've been following that. It's exactly what he's talking about.
Although there's one website too that I really like, or a group organization. It's called represent.us or .us. I guess it's a pun, but it's a nonpartisan organization. And the one thing I like is that they brought together a lot of people, including some people that I strongly disagree with, like Tea Party types and whatnot. But they've reached across the political spectrum against everyone who's against corruption in government. And they've brought them together, and they've created like laws that they're introducing in new states and so forth. They're saying, all right, a lot of this corruption is legalized, but we can change with the change of this stuff, and it'll be hard to do in the national level. They've already shown they've blocked this national, but at the state level, we have more control. And what they're doing is introducing forms of this anti-corruption legislation all over the country, and they're doing it in a bipartisan or multi-partisan way.
I took it to the Washington Post, so I'm one of those unknown people that supplied them with a lot of information. I found letters from people like Canon telling their employees in a letter, and it's written in a letter, you will contribute X amount of money to the Republican National Committee, and the checks were right there in the envelope from CREEP to the Republican National Committee. So I copied all this stuff and I gave it to the social etiquette editor of the Washington Post because a friend of mine actually knew her. Her name was Nina Hyde. Anyway, it got to Woodward and Bernstein, and they used some of it. So I was very glad I did it. I hear you. You never know.
I want to add a corollary to
you will find, and you never know exactly where something will change.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
We need a new generation of people actively involved in public service who are prepared to provide the quality of life the American people deserve.
I have met more kinds of people in this election than I could have ever, and to see them all working for this common cause. And I don't hear this a lot because a lot of people were like, hardcore Democrats maybe from the start, and so they're or they were like, and so I mean, but I've met so many different people. Some of them normally vote Libertarian, some of them normally vote Green, some of them normally vote Republican, and yet they all came together around, and of course some of them are socialists or progressives or something, and yet they all came together around Bernie, and they were willing to set aside some of their differences because they were people who really cared about human beings and having a just society.
Okay, what were your thoughts on the address?
I actually was really inspired because prior to this address, I was always thinking in terms of the current year, the current election, the contest, the convention, and I realized during this address, none of that entered my mind whatsoever. I was simply thinking about, my voice, the issues, and how to take my voice in those issues to the future. And Bernie Sanders really focused on what we needed to do now to prepare for the future, outside of the context of any election or any contest or any convention. And so I was really inspired about how I could take his message, which reflected my voice, and use that to prepare for the future.
Gotcha. How do you see yourself voting this November?
You know what? I feel like my voting preference has evolved because in the beginning, I didn't really care about voting for anybody. Bernie Sanders came out of nowhere, and I started to think, there's somebody actually reflecting my views. So I was never pro-Bernie because I didn't know he existed, and I certainly wasn't anti-Hillary. It was very similar to me as Obama, where he just kind of came out of nowhere and he gave me an idea of somebody who I might want to vote for. So when Bernie Sanders came along, I was inspired to, follow him because he seemed to be reflecting finally my voice. Now, as the convention comes up and of course the general election comes up, I'm now, presented with a different possibility, a different option of who am I going to vote for. And I haven't made that determination yet. I'm not in any kind of fixed position. I'm not Bernie or die. I'm really looking at who's going to best represent my voice, who's going to put the Supreme, justices on the U.S. Supreme Court. I'm looking at the actual issues, and I haven't really made that final decision yet, and nor am I fixed or firmly destined to any fixed position. I will know after I get through the convention. I hear all the platforms. I see whether Bernie's platforms that reflect my voice have been implemented, and then I'll make that determination.
Gotcha. I gotta run some other calls.
Yeah, it's.
That's
probably why he's a jerk.
Yeah, I'll just write about how he acted. Also,
the high school years are pretty tough for him.
I also want to point out just how he how he seemed to want negativity. Yeah.
But I think we were pretty good at deflecting that.
I think we did good, but I just want to show that this is how the media is acting. And
it's like you're at war.
Yeah. Honestly, no one's probably going to read the article, but I feel like I'm frustrated, and if we don't say anything, then no one will hear. So I think this is what I can do to help. So I should.
And that's the right attitude.
Yeah.
Like I said, you don't write for people to read. You write because you want to express the truth.
And so
people will find it or not. I mean, how many times look at Bernie. Bernie has been writing for literally a gazillion years. And then we found him much later.
Right.
Imagine if he ever gave up. We would have never had the unique type of candidate that Bernie is. I mean, we are Bernie. We are Bernie.
Right.
But Bernie had his own fire. He was there marching with Martin Luther King, and he makes us realize, we can be Bernie.
Right.
Bernie was us a gazillion years ago, and because of his efforts and the people that came before him, it won't take as many years to create Bernie 2.0.
Right.
Bernie is the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Just like what he said tonight, you're going to look back in time and say, this is where it started.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
We love to talk about Bernie Sanders. We are so excited about Bernie Sanders movement. We have so much to say.
Okay. What happened to the mood in the room once the address started and throughout the address online?
The thing that bothers me though that it's one thing to run, but as he pointed out, unless we can address the corruption that's occurred even in this election, right? What chance do people that with his ideas have in winning?
The media determined that we were a fringe campaign. Nobody thought we were going anywhere. Well, a lot has changed over a year. During this campaign, we won more than 12 million votes. We won 22 state primaries and caucuses. We came very close, within 2 points or less, in 5 more states. In other words, our vision for the future of this country is not some kind of fringe idea.
None of them are people that I trust or would want to or vote for. And I don't. I mean, I'd rather vote for myself than one of them.
His suggestion to start running yourself, but
I've got the screen back.
Well, we need to have some kind of in the wake of this. We can't. The political revolution can't just dissolve completely. We need to create some kind of grassroots.
And we don't talk about Democratic or Republican ideology.
Right.
We stay on the issues.
Right.
And we stay with people who we know are honest, intelligent, and hardworking.
brandnewcongress.org or brandnewcongress.com, and it's exactly what he's talking about, putting progressive people in Congress, like all at once.
So if you can email that video to us, that'd be good.
It'll be the gigantic video, but
that's fine.
Yeah, I'm gonna clean it up, edit it, make it nice, and then
Wait a little bit longer.
Edit it out of context to promote
yeah,
Hillary.
Right. Any parts that make me look tiny and not strong and not tall, I'm gonna edit those parts out. Alrighty.
All right.